Susie Japs, I'm just absolutely delighted to have you on my blog, taking care of your business. Susie, you recently gave a terrific workshop to my Vistage members. You are a seasoned Vistage speaker, one of the very high demand speakers that we have. And I learned so much. My members learned so much that I really wanted the opportunity to chat with you a little bit further. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
Great. Susie, you're the founder and managing director of WeJungo, which creates people plans for recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and retention practices. Tell me more about WeJungo, including where the name comes from. What's your origin story?
Ooh, I love that question. Well, I'll start with the name because I get that question a lot of what does it mean? It's made up. I made it up 15 years ago when I started the company, but it does have a meaning. So it's actually the Latin word jungo for join together matched up with the English word we. So it actually does stand for we join together. And our goal is when we work with clients for them to really feel like we are part of their team and an extension of them as we're helping them with their processes and strategies.
I love that. Thank you. Your origin story.
So it's interesting, and I'll try to keep it short, but it does start actually way back in third grade. That's where I can say my origin story. And just picture this, Jeff. I was a third grader. I wanted to enter a drawing contest. I wanted to draw my favorite animal, which at the time was a Siberian tiger. And I was lucky enough that my father was already a very talented artist. So I was asking him for tips. And this is what he said. He said, draw it upside down. And I thought,
draw it upside down.
Why would I draw it upside down? But you know what? My dad's an expert. I will just try it, right? I'll look at it in a different perspective. And it was amazing. It really worked. I actually won first place. And that was my first lesson in thinking differently or seeing things in a different perspective. And that's really when it started for me of looking at everything in a different way, always asking the question why, or maybe it will be better if we try it this way. And so luckily, I really brought that to everything, including at WeJungo, where we look at how our company is currently recruiting, interviewing, hiring. Is that really the best way? What if we try something else? What if we look at it differently? And so, that's the short version of the story.
I love that story, and it helps account for the innovation and creativity that I saw when you were doing the workplace, when you were doing the workshop for my members. You introduced a whole number of things that really shifted the picture upside down, as you put it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I'm certain there are other companies that do what WeJungo does. What would your clients say is unique about your firm?
Well, you may hear other companies say, no, Jeff, we're unique. No one else is like us, right? And I will say, though, I truly believe that about WeJungo because the reason we were created and what we continue to do today is to teach companies how to build better processes, strategies, teaching them how to fish. We love to use that analogy of fishing when it comes to talent, rather than doing it for them, but teaching them how to do that. And I would argue that there are companies out there like staffing firms, right? Recruiters that will go fill a position for a company, or there might be HR consultants who will help you stay compliant. So you're not, treating employees unfairly, you have an employee handbook, et cetera, but we don't do any of that. And those are kind of the more traditional things within HR consultants. Instead, we really are looking at the process. How do you improve the process? How do you change what you're currently doing instead of expecting the same results, but you're doing nothing different, right? So I think that the reason that our clients say that we continue to come back, we want to work with you, is that we push them and challenge them to look at their processes differently. For example, the most comical situation, which I come across all the time, is when I see a company is paying thousands of dollars per year on a job board. And I look at the results and I say, so this isn't working though. You haven't hired anyone from it. You're not getting quality applicants. And they shake their head. Yep, we know. And I say, why are you doing it then? And the response is, we don't know what else to do, Susie, and we can't do nothing. So we're just going to keep paying money for things that don't work. So for us, that is why clients love us, because we're going to always have a different idea, a different approach, and we're going to stop you from paying money for things that don't work.
Yeah, I certainly saw the way that you challenge companies on display in the workshop. You push my members, you challenge them to really think differently about some really, really important processes. I mean, talent, the acquisition of talent, the onboarding, the hiring, the managing of performance is critically, critically important right now. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you're seeing, given all that's happening in the larger society and the larger economy, heightened attention to talent-related topics.
Definitely this year, there is a heightened focus on the retention piece, which is interesting because actually, if you look at the data and the trends, of the employee or the talent side of it, a lot of people are saying, I'm not willing to make a move. I'm not willing to even look right now because I'm nervous about like what's going to happen. There's a lot of unknowns. But yet companies are still saying, we don't want to take the chance. We want to show our employees why they should still want to work for us. So we're actually seeing an increase of that focus this year, which is very interesting to me because, again, the data would potentially say to us that we don't have to worry about that.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I might have guessed as well. But for so many companies, happy employees, happy customers, happy clients. Mm-hmm. And so your comments about what you're observing really ring true, really makes sense. When you work with companies, Susie, I'm curious, what's a typical engagement like with a company?
Well, we always like to start small. All of our work is project-based, Jeff. And so we always want the company to have an opportunity to work with us on something small first to see, is this a great fit? Do you see how this can move you to that next level of strategy or improvements? And so a lot of times we'll do something small, like what we call a talent profile, which is creating really clarity around your new positions that you're looking to fill, but also existing positions. And people always say, oh, okay, so that's a job description. No, it's way better than that. It's really mapping out, what does success look like? What does someone have to do to be successful? What are the behaviors that they have to show, and building that out for a whole year so that then you can use it for not only the hiring piece, but also onboarding and performance management, which increases your ability to engage and retain your people. It's such a great tool, but it's something small like that is typically what we start with, and everything is project-based. So we would scope out exactly what our time together will look like, what your deliverables are, and then there's just a flat cost for that.
Sure. The talent profile resonated with me and with many of my CEOs for a whole bunch of different reasons. The descriptions of what success looks like, I think, is such an intuitive thing, but something that often doesn't find its way into certain key documents like onboarding folks, for example, and attaching timeframes. What does success look like at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? I think is quite compelling. What are the use cases among your clients for the talent profile, which I think was probably one of the biggest takeaways of my members?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's usually the favorites of that session is the talent profile. There's really three main uses. Of course, it can be used for many things, but one and a key one that a lot of business owners and business leaders love to use it for is for the hiring piece. I mean, I've even had interactions where I've maybe met a CEO who's already in the process of hiring, let's say, a key leadership position like a CFO. And I will ask them just some very basic questions about what success looks like or what they're looking for. And they find themselves not able to answer it. And the reason being is because a lot of times we don't really sit down and ask, what does success look like? How will I know if I hire the person that they're going to be the one? Instead, companies will go, they'll go on Google, they'll look up some similar job descriptions of a CFO, they'll blend it together into one, and then they post that, but it's not really their position. It's not for their company. And so they never really have that measuring stick to know then how to hire well. The second way that they use talent profiles is actually on existing employees and positions. We actually have a client in the Bay Area who had us create, I'm not exaggerating here, 44 talent profiles.
Oh my
They have that many different positions and levels within their position. And they said, you know what, we can admit we have not actually been clear enough with our existing workforce on what success looks like, as well as creating career paths and transparency on what you need to do to get to the next level. And this talent profile could really do that for us. So that's the second. And then the third is succession planning. And I love that because there's so many opportunities for either people leaving who are retired to really share their best practices and knowledge so that you can replace them. Or potentially, if let's say there's an owner who really has nobody internally to take over for them, then let's call out, what does that new position need to look like for there to be a succession and a transition?
I love those use cases because they strike me as really at the center of certain really fundamental processes for successful companies, high-performing companies.
Yes.
And you take your eye off the ball of any one of those, you're going to have problems. You're going to have challenges in the market, it seems to me.
Yeah, or you might wake up finding you have no succession plan.
Exactly. Yeah. Or people have left. You've been a Vistage speaker since 2017. Tell me how your journey to becoming a speaker.
Ooh, this is always a great story because it actually begins with a Vistage chair, funny enough. So I am in San Diego, and one of the chairs in San Diego, his name's Jim, reached out to me many years ago and said, hey, Susie, would you ever be willing to come to my CEO group and speak about essentially what you guys do for companies, which is to hire the best and avoid the rest. And I said, sure, I'll take a stab at it. Happy to come and meet your group. So I build the deck, I build the presentation. I went, it was super successful with his Vistage group. And he said to me, oh my gosh, you have to do this for all Vistage groups, Susie. Why aren't you doing this? And honestly, it's because I just didn't know that that even existed to be a speaker in that format. So then he just referred me to other chairs, and then Vistage Corporate reached out to me, and it just kind of all snowballed into an opportunity that now, many, many years later, I'm still doing.
That's a great story. And the impact on my group was certainly significant. Tell me more broadly about what you think your greatest impact and contribution to Vistage leaders is to them, to their companies and their communities.
Yeah. So what I most am excited about is when I meet Vistage groups and members through my journey, traveling and speaking. I think the biggest piece is getting them to realize there are things they literally are doing today that are so ineffective when it comes to recruiting, interviewing, and hiring, but also give them the tools and the knowledge of what to do tomorrow. And that's, I think, why the session resonates with so many people. Is a perfect example is the job ad, right? And we kind of joke about that. You were there at your group where I said, hey, you guys, what do we think of this job ad? That's a real job ad, rate it 1 to 5. And some of the members even joke, wait a second, is that my job ad? It kind of looks like ours. And it's a really bad job ad that all of us rate like a 1 out of 5. So that's just one thing right there where we're like, oh my gosh, we're fishing with bait that's not even going to work. Why are we even making that type of mistake?
Yeah. The image of what pools you fish in and what bait you use is a very vivid one. And I love the fact that it really harkens back to your upbringing in Minnesota, the land of 1,000 lakes.
10,000 lakes, actually.
That's right, 10,000 lakes, 10,000.
Yes.
But that really made me pause and think about, so where are my members fishing for candidates? is that the right pool? Is that the right lake? And then
Right.
what are they using? And so that I think it's a very vivid image. What are you most proud of in your own
Mm.
leadership journey, Susie?
Honestly, I know this is really cheesy, Jeff, but the thing I'm most proud of is one of the jobs I have today, which is the hardest job in my life, which is being a mom.
Yeah.
And I will say, though, being a mom has made me a more patient person. It has made me a more compassionate, empathetic person as a business owner. And even with working with clients, it's just made me a better person. So I'm very proud of that job that I have been allowed to have and raising two beautiful human beings right now. But that I feel like is the biggest contribution that I have, is really allowing two people to grow and become hopefully great human beings as well when they're adults.
I love that. And I remember when we were preparing for your workshop, one of our correspondents, you said, "Hey, I'm on the soccer field. Just bear with me." No doubt, with one of those two wonderful human beings.
Yes.
What are you? You spend a lot of time with a lot of companies, Vistage companies, and other companies as well. What are the three or four biggest mistakes that you see companies make?
Okay, I'm going to focus on two of the three that you're asking is probably going to be more focused on hiring. And the reason I'm going to focus on that today, because obviously we could talk about succession planning or organizational design or like more of the strategic parts, but I think the biggest mistakes that are impactful to companies that I want them to avoid is around hiring. And one is rushing to fill a position too quickly. Right. So it's either not getting clear because no, I don't have time, Susie. I just need to fill that manager position. We lost somebody we didn't know we were going to. Okay, well, let's treat this like a sport. We would actually watch the last game. What went wrong with that last person? Why did it not work?
Yeah.
Let's figure that out and refine the job scope, refine our interview process before we start doing it again. And oftentimes companies are in kind of urgency, reactionary mode that they don't do that. So that's one of the big mistakes. Is I always say to them, is it really going to hurt if we pause for 1 week to get clear, then make a good hire so you don't actually then lose months and months when that hire goes bad because it wasn't the right person, right?
Sure.
So let's just spend a little more time up front. So that's one. The second is kind of what we were joking about earlier with fishing, going to a really poor quality lake and not even realizing it. And so I always remind companies that if you think of job boards, because that's a lot of the recruiting methods that companies use, is they just post job ads on job boards. That is the same as going to a lake, throwing in a net, and seeing what swims into it. You have no control over the actual quality of your catch, as well as you might not even be going into a lake that has the right fish.
Yeah, the fish you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. I always want you guys to look at data. What is the data telling us? Is this a quality pool? I just spoke to a Vistage member actually last week. I said, give me the numbers. You posted on Indeed. He said, yep. He said, I got 60 applicants and 4 were decent enough that I sent filter questions. That is a really, really, really not great pool, right? It's a crappy pool. So I did the math for him and he's like, oh my gosh. I can't even believe I was considering interviewing those people, right? Yeah. So it's looking at that. And then the third is just more on the retention piece. So, and I even kind of shared this with your members as well, Jeff, but making sure if we're going to invest time, resources, money, all of that to retaining our people, really spending the time to get their feedback to know what that actually is. Sure. A lot of companies I meet have told me they've increased their benefits to stay competitive. They're increasing the pay. They're increasing all these things that they're reading in the news is important. But when I ask them their specific workforce, what was the feedback of what's important to those people? They have no idea.
Yeah, that one resonates with me in a very fresh way. My Vistage groups met this week, and one of the conversations that we had was about that exact question. Do we really know what employees value and what causes them to stay? And maybe what is not a real incentive for them to hang around. And just knowing your customer, we talk about that when we're dealing with literal customers, but
right.
employees they're stakeholders. They're really key. They're really key to our success. And knowing what resonates with them, what motivates them. I also, in the first one that you mentioned, hiring too quickly and not being willing to press the pause button. I'm sure many leaders have made the mistake more than once of not following the adage of hire slow and fire quick. And I'm hearing echoes of that as well.
Yeah. And I would just add one quick thing, if it's okay, Jeff, with that piece is if you have that clarity and spend a little time up front, also once you've hired the person, it's not as confusing on are they working or not, right?
Yes.
If we haven't thought that all out, then we might end up keeping people longer than we should have because we just aren't quite sure why this isn't working.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Susie Japs, Managing Director of WeJungo, which creates customized people plans for small and mid-sized companies, and Vistage speaker. Susie, delighted to have you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me today.